Hello there, aquatic adventurers. Welcome back to Musicland Stories, the origin point for all music and adventure stories in the known universe, and some of the unknown ones. And we're here at the Musicland Concert Hall. I'm your trusted narrator, the Captain. And I'm glad to see you've joined us on this underwater quest, searching for the last Leviathan, whose song we hear is the best. The wave of sound has carried us across the 7 seas, plus some other magic ocean spots that no one's ever seen. But today's adventure just might be the strangest, I affirm, because my crew became consumed by some very catchy earworms. I was in the cockpit navigating through the deep, and at first I didn't notice how my words began to creep into funny rhythms, twists of tongue that drilled into my head. I thought it was just me, so there was nothing to be said. Margie stood beside me, fingers tapping out in time. Drummer girls, they got that way, regardless of the rhyme. She noticed something slither right outside the window glass, but she forgot it just as quickly as her own song came to pass.
La 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 la.
Then down on the deck, where the others kept quarters, Omar made jams with a band of ghost hoarders, playing Gabriel's trumpet by way of Poseidon, when a different tune began to slide in. It was quite unfamiliar to his revenant friends, with a lift and a fall that came back round again. They couldn't keep up with his new melody, an ethereal song like the sound of the sea. While off in the common room, Ezra kept court. His accordion blues began to distort. Then he saw something move. It was just out of mind, but whatever it was, left a new riff behind. Kaylee looked on longingly, jealous of her friend. Her violin had broken strings she simply could not mend. That's a common problem when you're so far from the shore. All you have is what you bring. It's hard to find a store. But Kaylee was suddenly overcome with a flash of inspiration. A catchy, clever hook appeared, begging for creation. But she had no instrument or tool on which to play. Still, the song stayed in her mind. It wouldn't go away. That's how Mingus found them when he walked into the room. His friends were mumbling madly, overwhelmed by catchy tunes. Ezra and Kaylee both were affected. Soon, he found Omar too. Then up in the cockpit, Margie and I, well, we were not immune. But he was hard of hearing. That's why Mingus played the bass. His cochlear complications also meant he could escape from those sneaky, slimy earworms with their catchy melodies. No, Mingus couldn't hear them, which meant that he could see them. Oh, wait a second. That didn't rhyme. How did... doesn't matter. Let's back up a moment. Have you ever gotten a tiny piece of song stuck in your head? A little riff or jingle or melody, and it just won't go away no matter what you do, to the point that you're lying awake at night going la da 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 da. Well, that's what we call an earworm. They're catchy, sometimes even contagious, but nothing you should worry about. Not usually. It's just music, right? But then there are shipworms. Actual worms with creepy little clamshell mouths. Ugh. Back in the day of those big wooden ships, when people sang shanties as they sailed the 7 seas, those nasty little critters like to burrow into the hull of the ship. They'd build a little nest to hatch their eggs, then the whole worm family would feast on the wood until the ship fell apart. But what would happen after the ship sank? The shipworms never thought that through. Most of them anyway. But a few sneaky slugs got smart to the sound of the sailors' songs. These clever shipworms realized they could nest inside of human ears and live longer, happier lives. But first, they had to trick the sailors into letting down their guard. So they learned to mimic melodies and send the sailors into a daze, then follow the songs inside the ear and latch onto the brain. It was much juicier than waterlogged wood grain. Oh, hey, another rhyme. Isn't this fun? It really wasn't that fun for us, though. We were all so overwhelmed by this song stuck in our heads. We were so distracted by the infectious melodies that we couldn't even see the shipworms slithering around the space. Except for Mingus, that is. And he did not like them leaving slime trails on the very same windows that he had just cleaned for the second time last week. So he slipped into a scuba suit and decided to do some exterior sanitizing. Before he stepped outside, however, he noticed a metal basin in the corner near the airlock, with the broom handle propped up beside it. He figured he might need a little help to get the earworms off, so he grabbed them both as he headed out the airlock. He was a bit impulsive, Mingus, but always well-intentioned. Bassists can be like that. That's actually how he broke his last bass, too. Once he was out in the open water, Mingus heard a rhythm. It had the cadence of clapping, like a cheering audience somewhere in the distance. He was worried that the earworms were adapting, that they'd found a way to get to him. He had to act fast. Mingus saw the ugly song slugs slithering over the ship, doing their best to burrow between the mustard metal boards. He swam in closer to the creatures and tried to pry them off the side, using the broom handle he'd brought with them. He pushed and heaved and tried to get his leverage, but the earworms wouldn't budge. They were stubborn creatures, not to mention really, really sticky. Ugh. Mingus needed another angle. He thought about the way he used to catch bugs back on land when he was little. He'd use a clear cup to contain them on the table, then slide the cup all the way to the edge. From there, he cuffed the bottom with his hand or a napkin and let the bug go free. Earworms were technically bugs, right? And the big metal basin he'd found, that was sort of a cup. He should be able to do the same thing. That was Mingus's thought anyway. But the laws of physics, ups and downs, they weren't quite the same underwater. He pinned one of the worms between the basin and the hull, but it wasn't until he had it captive that he noticed the drain in the bottom of the basin. The earworm used its shell-shaped mouth to pry the plug out. Pop! Then it pressed an eerie slanted eye against the hole and glared at Mingus. The earworm was angry. And Mingus was glad he couldn't hear the bitter song he assumed that it was shouting at him. But he could still hear that faint applause in the distance. It almost felt like whoever was clapping, they were making fun of him, mocking his failed attempt to capture the critters with the wash tub. He knew that wasn't true, of course, but sometimes we all feel a little bit embarrassed when things don't go as planned, even when the only ones around to see us stumble are literally worms. And sometimes, when we're embarrassed, we lash out. It's not a good response, but it's a normal one. And that's precisely what Mingus did. He jabbed his broom handle towards the drain plug, hoping to scare the earworm on the other side. It worked. Except the broom handle got stuck in the hole. That gave Mingus another idea. He reached out and grabbed a strand of seaweed floating by. He stretched it out and wrapped it tight, then strung it from the very end of the broomstick all the way down to the metal basin. And just like that, Mingus had an underwater washtub base, something to replace the upright that he lost earlier. What's that saying? The ocean gives and the ocean taketh away. Something like that. Mingus plucked the seaweed bass string with his finger. It let out a low, resonant bong that echoed in the washtub. The sound swelled and amplified inside the metal basin until Mingus's bass line got so big it began to shake the ship. The earworms, in turn, began to lose their grips on the ship. Mingus started improvising then, messing with the tempo, in hopes that the chaos might break the spell that the worms had cast on his crewmates. One by one, the creatures fell from the hull, stunned by Mingus's avant-garde bass riffing. That strange applause was out there in the distance again, this time encouraging him to keep playing, which he did, until he looked into the window and saw 2 earworms slithering around inside the ship. He was too late. They'd already breached the hull. Mingus swam back to the airlock as fast as his feet could carry him. He stashed his washtub base with his scuba suit in the corner. There'd be plenty of time to mess around with it after he cleared out the earworm invasion. Not that Mingus had a plan for that. Again, with the impulsiveness. But he had to do something, or all his friends would lose their minds to the maddening repetition of a terrible, catchy melody. And we couldn't have that, now could we? This is the point where a kid like Mingus would typically ask for help. But that wasn't really an option, seeing as the adult on the ship, that would be me, was still catatonic from an all-too-catchy chorus. Then, Mingus remembered the strange clapping crowd in the distance. Extreme times call for extreme measures. Specifically, 4 measures worth of music, which is precisely what he played on my portal drum. Not that he actually knew how to play it. Transdimensional portals aren't really meant for kids. But his ears, hard of hearing though they were, could still feel around for a rhythm. Mingus tapped the riff out as he thought about the audience applause, and the portal picked up what he was putting down. With a rat-ta-ta-ta-ta and a brrrr, our ship was transported right into the clapping hands of a cleaner shrimp fleet. That must have been what Mingus was hearing. Cleaner shrimp feed on the parasites and pests, and they advertise their services by clapping their little claws together. Why go out and search for food when you could just eat it off the backs of ships and fish who want to be rid of them anyway? Everybody wins. And that's precisely what happened. The cleaner shrimp chowed down on those salty, sticky earworms, while the rest of us, slowly but surely, woke up from our song-induced stupors. No one quite remembered the melody that mesmerized them, though we all knew that it had happened, that we'd heard a song so catchy that it drilled into our heads until it was the only thing we thought about. Except for Mingus, that is. By the time the rest of us came to, he was already off in the corner of the common room, plucking away at his washtub base with a smile on his face. And who could blame him? He had really found the pocket in the groove this time. And the others, they were feeling it too. So they decided to join in on the jam. And oh, they were coming up with quite a catchy song. I could hear it all the way up in the cockpit, where I was trying to recalibrate the portal. Mingus plays a little hard sometimes, and we still had a last Leviathan to catch. Hopefully, its fabled song is catchier than the one the earworms put inside my head. But I guess you'll have to come back another time to hear that. For now, this is your captain. Out. Musicland Stories is a collaboration between Starglow Media and Double Elvis. Executive producers from Double Elvis are Jake Brennan and Brady Sattler. Executive producers from Starglow Media are Jed Baker and Agarainish A. Palmer. This episode of Musicland Stories was written by Tom Dunn. Alessandro Santoro is our showrunner. Narration by me, Nikki Lynette. Original score by Scott Janovitz. Story editing by Zeph Lundy. And episode mix by Colin Fleming. Grown-ups, you can find more ad-free audio fun for the whole family by subscribing to Starglow Plus on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts.